Welcome to NAIS Member Voices. I'm Scott Donaldson, Member Engagement Director at the National Association of Independent Schools. Every week this month, to celebrate 100 episodes of Member Voices, we're sharing some of our favorite answers to key questions from all of our past seasons. In this episode, we're sharing a selection of the reading recommendations our guests have shared over the past 8 years. Our guests are often avid readers, and I know many of our listeners are too. See how many of these you've read. Is there anything that you're reading at the moment or that you've read over the past year or several years that you feel like has really helped prepare you for this moment?
Oh, I'm looking over at my bookshelf to see. I read articles constantly, from NAIS to Harvard Business Review, various education outlets and so forth. I think those, kind of keeping up with all of that is really important and good. Other than that, I have, some of the go-to things I've read over the years, which has been really good. There's one book that I used to teach. It's Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. It's a psychology book about how he survived the Holocaust and what that experience was. But what I find in that book is a lot of lessons about, how to live your life and the significance of individuals and the gifts that an individual kind of brings to the table and how to recognize what you bring to the world and work within what your gifts and skills are. And so I do think about that a lot as well.
Actually, I just picked up an old book because I've been diving back into traits again because we were kind of working on readjusting some, thinking about looking at our identity again. And I picked up an old book called 10 Traits of Highly Effective Teachers, and it's good stuff. And so just sometimes I feel like I need to go back and just revisit.
I recently read a couple of books. One, Arthur Brooks' From Strength to Strength, which is about finding the second curve of leadership in life. I read a book that I encountered on a podcast recently, Will Storr's The Status Game, which I really enjoy reading. There's so much really good social science being done, that intersection of evolutionary biology, neuroscience, and psychology, and so Will Storr has a recent book that's in addition to that set. And then this summer, I read some fiction. I started as an English teacher, and I say I don't read enough fiction. And so Kazuo Ishiguro's book, Clara and the Sun, was super interesting as a take on artificial intelligence and the ethical questions that we encounter as we look at the future.
Actually, one of my books that I have on my bookshelf, and it's within arm's reach, is The Art of Coaching Teams by Elena Aguilar. She is a wonderful writer, educator out of California who really has helped shape the mission and vision of our coaching program through her book, The Art of Coaching. And her second book, The Art of Coaching Teams, is what I would call a must-read for anybody in leadership. And it has all kinds of wonderful chapters about forming your team, having a vision for your team. Bingo doesn't make institutional change, some wonderful chapters like that. But her work has really been instrumental in inspiring me as a leader. And I always go back to that book, especially if I'm having a difficult time with something. And that's been a great resource for me. It's hard to do all of the reading about everything all of the time. One thing I really appreciate is the Marshall Memo by Kim Marshall, which is a great synopsis of the week's articles across different educational magazines. There's always something I find in the Marshall Memo that I will either use myself or forward on to some of my teammates. Another book that I have really enjoyed and something interesting, I think, for educators to consider is Measure What Matters by John Doerr. And it's a great way of looking at your objectives and how you're going to measure them. And I always get a little bit leery when we talk about measurement and data and objectives in the education field because I'm very mindful that we're not the business field, but I also think that it's something that we can look into a little bit more and hash out and explore. It's okay to to not measure everything, but I think you still have to be able to measure some things to be able to show progress and growth.
Let's see. I listen to Michael Lewis's podcast. He's great. He's done podcasts, a whole series on coaching. He did a series on refereeing, and he did a series on leadership. Those have been really interesting to listen to. And then one of the last books I read was Ryan Holiday's Stillness is the Key. And I've read a number of his books, and I think kind of it goes back to the Stoics and stillness being a skill, right? Being, kind of not using his words, but mine, just kind of like how you can center yourself and be calm in the middle of, say, chaos or whatever. And how this practice of finding stillness within yourself, I think has been extremely helpful to me because of not that schools are chaos, but the chaotic nature, and especially these last 2 years where decision fatigue is real, and the amount of decisions being made and heavy decisions being made on regular basis has weighed on many school leaders, on all of us, to be honest, I think. And so that was a great book and resource for me. And I've read a number of his other books as well.
I really will betray my origins as a literature teacher and say, I don't think there's any better primer for leadership than Shakespeare. Knowing what bad leadership looks like can help you start to think about what you think your good leadership will look like. And there is an abundance of leadership lessons in Shakespeare's plays, particularly, in the tragedies and the histories. And so I've been really rewarded by reflecting on leadership in my own reading. And I would say, go to the Bard. He's the best.
Thanks for listening to NAIS Member Voices. Whether you're a new listener or you've been listening for years, we'll release our next compilation on Monday, August 18th, sharing our past guests' biggest challenges and sources of inspiration. As always, you can find some related NAIS resources and more information from all of our past and upcoming episodes by visiting nais.org/membervoices. Please be sure to subscribe to Member Voices wherever you get your podcasts so that you don't miss an episode. And go back and listen to previous episodes you might have missed. Finally, if you have feedback for us, please leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform to let us know how we're doing. You can always send us your thoughts and suggestions on what you'd like to hear on a future podcast by emailing membership@nais.org.